Welcome to microeconomics class. In this class, I'll be solving this question. This question 5, and the question is on market structure. The question goes thus: a producer has the cost function C equals Q squared plus 2Q plus 66. The demand function for its product is P equals 50 minus 5Q. Then we have to find the profit maximizing level of output, and also we also have to find the profit at this level. So there are two ways of approaching this question. In other words, there are two methods of solving this question. So in this video, I'll be using the first method, that is one of the methods, and the second video that I'm going to do, I'll be using the second method to solve the same question here. So let's apply the first method. So here is the solution. And this method we want to apply is the most popular method. Method 1. So in this method, we'll be applying profit maximization rule. That is the profit maximization rule. Rule states that a firm maximizes profits when MC, that is marginal cost, equals marginal revenue. And you can see from this question, we are given our cost function, also known as total cost function. So Q squared plus 2Q plus 66. And we are also given the demand function as P equals P550 minus 5Q. And we know that this is total cost, and we can easily derive our marginal cost from total cost. However, we need to have our total revenue so that we can derive marginal revenue, but we are not given total revenue. In other words, we need to first derive our total revenue using our demand function. The thing we are going to do here is that we are going to derive MC function from total cost function, that is from total cost function, which is also known as C function. So how do we derive that? Don't forget, MC is simply the first derivative of total cost function. In other words, we have the C over the Q, that is the TC over the Q. So this is our C. So we are going to differentiate this with respect to Q. When we differentiate this first one, that is Q squared, differentiation will give us 2Q. Then we have plus, when we differentiate this one, 2Q, we are going to have 2. And because 66 is a constant, it will go, so it will be ignored. 66 is a constant, it will be ignored. So this 2Q plus 2 represent our marginal cost function. Now, having gotten our marginal cost function, so we proceed to total revenue. How do we derive it? Because we need our total revenue before we can get our marginal revenue. So recall that the total revenue that is derived, we are going to derive total revenue, that is TR, from the demand function, that is derive total revenue function from the demand function. So this total revenue, remember the formula for calculating total revenue is P, that is the price of the commodity multiplied by the unit of output sold. Okay, now we are given our P already. P here represents the indirect demand function we are given. When I say indirect demand function, that is inverse demand function, is a demand function in which P is made the subject of formula. If it is Q that is made the solve formula, we call it a direct demand function. But in this question, we are given an indirect demand function. Even if we have been given a direct demand function, we first need to convert it to an indirect demand function, that is an inverse demand function, in which P is made of a formula before we can use it to derive our T hat. So in other words, the P here represents this inverse demand function, which is 50 minus 5Q. 50 minus 5Q, we have 50 minus 5Q. This represents our P, then multiply by Q outside. When we open the bracket, we are going to have 550. We are going to have 50Q minus 5Q squared. That is Q times 50, we have 50Q. Q times 5Q, we have 5Q squared. Now we have our total revenue. So the next thing is to derive marginal revenue curve. That is marginal revenue function from total revenue function. This is total revenue function. Okay. Now this is T half function. The marginal revenue function is simply the first derivative of this total revenue function, that is the T half over the Q. The Q, which is equals to, when you differentiate this 50Q, we have 50, then minus, when you differentiate this one, you have 10Q. Okay, now we go back to profit maximization rule. Okay, therefore, MC equals M half is equivalent to what? What's our MC? We have derived it earlier. So we have 2Q plus 2, then equals to, what's our M half? 50 minus 10Q. Then the next thing, we have to collect the like times. So we have 2Q. We take this to this side, we have plus 10Q plus 10Q. Then we have equals 50 minus 2. Then this gives us 12Q equals to 48. Then we divide both sides by the coefficient of Q, which is 12. Q is now equals to 48 over 12, which is equals to 4. So in other words, the profit maximizing level of output is 4. Okay, our Q is 4. So we have gotten the answer for this first one. So the second question says, what is the profit at this level? What is the profit at this level? Now, to derive the profit, so let me do it here because of space. So you remember that the formula for calculating profit, that is profit, is represented by pi. In economics, pi, profit, is equal to total revenue minus total cost. Here is the formula. Total revenue minus total cost. So we can derive our total revenue and also our total cost. You remember that the total revenue is equals to 50Q. 50Q minus 5Q. Okay, this can be, the value for this one can be derived by substituting the value for Q into this function. Therefore, we have 5 multiplied by 4, which is Q here, minus, 50 is not 5, 50 Q. We have 50 multiplied by 4, okay, then we have minus 5, 4 squared. Finish squared, yes, squared. Okay, this is T half and T is it. Okay, now the value for this one will be 50 times 4, that is 200. Then we have minus we have minus 4 squared. 4 squared is 16. Then that is 200. Then we have 5 to bracket 4 squared, that is 16. Then this is equals to 200 minus 5 times 16, that is 80. And the answer for this will be 200 minus 80. So what do we have? So we have 120. This is total revenue. So we have gotten the value for total revenue. Now we can also do the same thing for total cost by substituting the value into the total cost function. So how do we substitute that? You recall that cost function, that is total cost function, is this, that is C equals Q squared plus 2Q plus 66. Then when we plug in the value, which is 4, we are going to have TC, that is C equals to 4 squared plus 2 bracket 4, then plus 66. 4 squared, that is 16 plus 8, then plus 66. So when you have this, that is 16 plus 8 plus 66. Okay? 16 plus 8, you have 24. Then 24 plus 66, you have 90. You have 90. Okay? Now, the total cost is 90. The total cost is 90. Then we can now go back to our profit formula. Okay? Therefore, phi equals to TR. What is our TR? The value for TR is 120 minus TC, 90, which is equals to 30. Okay? Therefore, the profit is equals to 30. So, you can see the question is very simple. You just need to pay attention to details. So, in the second video I'll be applying the second method.